Welcome to If They Won't Listens, episode 7, with our guest Brian. How you doing today, Brian?
Very good, thank you.
Morning, Dante. How are you doing?
Yeah, same as always. Barely alive.
So, what do you want?
Barely here.
What do you want to dive into this morning, Brian?
Well, I'd like to talk about some of the big problems in the world and how I think that they could be taken care of, and that involves how governments work throughout the world. So, if we could delve into that a little bit, I'd like to ask you guys. What have you thought about the future much, and what kind of future you'd like to see, and specifically in how we work as far as governments go. Like, for example, the American government for you guys. Obviously, I think you see some problems in how democracy is working in America right now.
Understatement.
Yeah, so that was a guess on my part, but I assume that most people are not very happy with the way it's running. We suffer from a lot of the same problems here in Canada, where I'm from. I'm Canadian, and for example, one example that a lot of people use when they're talking about the future that they would like to see is a Star Trek style world. As a goal to achieve. Now, I don't know if that's the type of future that you guys would like to see in the future, but a lot of people refer to that as a bit of an example of what to strive for. Do you guys have any specific ideas on what you think the world should look like in the future? And when I'm talking about the future, I mean 100 years from now, 500 years from now, whatever it takes. Eh? So is that something that is attractive to you guys? A Star Trek type of future?
I mean, first of all, I've got to say that I'm not the most familiar with the I don't even know what they call it in Star Trek. What Earth is in Star Trek. Not a huge Trekkie. I can speak in terms of Halo. I assume that Star Trek is probably like Halo in the way that Earth is its own, like is like one government basically. Earth is like one body, um, and works together. And if that's what we're talking about, I mean, yeah, that sounds great. Have I ever really sat and pondered the idea of what that would be like? Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can't really say. I think that if someone had a solution or an ideal picture of what the world should be like, we would all be working towards it, and we're not. Um,
Yeah.
so for me, really, it's such a loaded question. I really don't know how to answer it. I mean, obviously, I think that peace among everyone would be fantastic, but also everything's great all the time. Nothing's really great. Everything's just kind of bland and I don't know.
Well,
I feel
I,
like if the world was at peace, if all the countries were at peace, uh might have some issues. I mean, that's
well,
something to
I, I'm
really think about.
yeah, I'm not, but try to portray a utopian world where there are no problems. The fact of the matter, in my regard, I mean, if you were to ask me what the meaning of life is, I would tell you it's overcoming obstacles. It's life has no meaning if you don't have any obstacles. You have to be overcoming things. You have to be growing. You have to be there. If like you said, I think you were touching on the idea that things would be kind of boring if everything was perfect. And I don't think there's any achievable. It's not really achievable to build the perfect world where there are no problems, and it would actually be detrimental to humans. We need our obstacles in life. That's what makes life interesting. If we don't have, problems that we're overcoming, just our struggles through life, then life would become extremely boring. And we would, we need things that drive us. We need our, you work towards your career, you work towards a family, you work towards different things that's what makes your life. And if life is too easy, I think it becomes very boring and becomes very mundane, and it's not a life that I would want. But when we talk about the future and government, I just want to see things, or I just would like to see things advance and work smoother. But I'd have no utopian ideals that it's going to smooth everything over. You're still going to have issues with racism or issues with all kinds of problems. Nothing is ever going to and it shouldn't make the world so that you don't have any problems. If you don't have any problems, like I said, life wouldn't be good. But let me get to a little more of what I'm talking about here is right now, we don't really get a chance to participate in government. If you've been paying attention to anything going on right now, you know that in the States, the Electoral College are the people that actually pick the president. And your voting is just a suggestion to them. And here in Canada, there are some similarities to it. It's not quite like that, but there are similarities to it. But all of this leads to the fact that none of us really feel like our voting does anything. You don't, I would assume you don't feel like you have any real control over your government, what your government does, the direction it takes. And to me, that's the problem. But that is what I consider to be a problem, is actually a feature when people were designing democracies. So in the United States, when they decided to build this democracy that they didn't want to give everybody the power to choose the president, because they were worried that people aren't smart enough to pick a good president. And that's why they decided to have the Electoral College as a in-between. There's a little more to it than that. It's also to help in smooth out representation, because in the inner United States, there's not as much population as there is along the coast. And so the people that lived in the more rural inner communities don't want to be ruled by the people on the coast. So to smooth that out, they gave them more representation per person than the people along the coast. And anyway, I don't want to get into all that too much. The main point I want to make, though, is that throughout history, the big question has always been, and really they don't even assume it to be a question. They know the answer. They think they know the answer, that the people are not smart enough to self-rule or pick their own president even. And therefore, smart people, what they consider smart people, should be able to intervene and make sure that the right choices are made. And so the Electoral College is made up of people that are usually lawyers. I mean, everybody in politics seems to be a lawyer. And so they're well-educated people, often business owners, and they feel that they have a higher level of intelligence than the average people. And therefore, these smarter people should be the ones that make sure that the people are not picking bad leaders. So you're only getting the opportunity to pick your leader. You're not even getting the opportunity to make choices on individual individual subjects or individual problems. So they don't look to you you don't get the vote on how you're going to handle climate change or how you should, how much you should tax your gasoline or any of these things. You pick your leader and then they make those decisions. And if you don't like the decisions, then you get an opportunity to hopefully to pick another leader. So my point being that throughout time, right from the very first concept of democracy, they struggled with the idea of, well, how do we make a democracy, but we don't give people too much power because we're worried about people having too much power, that they will make bad decisions. And so their answer is things like the electoral college. The real shocker, though, is that most people would be under the impression that that's what the higher up people, in the States, it was, Washington and Jefferson and all the rest of them that imposed that on the rest of the United States. This idea that you're not smart enough to make these decisions, therefore we need an electoral college. And it's not true that they imposed that on the United States. All the individuals in the United States also felt that way. They were in agreement that their neighbors and the people they know and the people they work with are not smart enough. So let me ask you this. Do you think that the people around you, if they had the ability to actually make policy, if everybody voted to, legalize marijuana or, on the very specific issues that the United States is dealing with, abortion, marijuana, climate change, if people could individually vote on every one of those issues, do you think it would be a good idea or a bad idea?
I'll let you go, Ricky.
I mean, obviously a lot to unpack there. I think it's a double-edged sword, and I think a lot of what you're talking about is well known. I mean, Socrates and Plato, they referred to it as a thing where if anyone's allowed to say anything at any time with any inflection, and the repercussions vary based on what they say, then I don't know, it's just dicey. There's so many ways to take it. Do I think I know enough to make answers about everything? On some things, maybe, but about everything, no. And do I think my neighbors do? Mostly, no. But that's way too subjective, too. I mean, if we were to break this down to a smaller question, there's only 3 of us here.
Yes.
Let's pretend us 3 were the only people on an island.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy for us to have a common goal for ease of access. So if we're on an island, shelter, ways to have food, ways to work less and achieve more. All those things are going to be mutually beneficial if we're pragmatic. But the problem is the guy on top is never going to be with the guy on the bottom. So like in the sense of a democracy, like I'm not hanging out with Trump. And if I was, I would be seen in the birds of a feather flock together as one of his cronies. I wouldn't be just his friend. Like you take one picture with Epstein and whoa, apparently you were fucking kids.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most people were, but I'm just saying, like, if you have an island where you fuck kids, there's other stuff there. There's drugs. There's, you know what I mean? It was like Michael Jackson's house. Like, it was a fucking attraction place. There was more than fucking kids. So I don't think any of it's okay, but I won't dare tether every picture of someone with Epstein or his wife to kids. But what it's really rough, like having any individual person try to decide on any group of ideas because we all think so differently. Plato and Socrates, like the whole build your own society, philosopher king thing, that could work, but a lot of people will resent the guy in power, even if, let's pretend we built a society based on thought and ideas and remarks. And so the guy in first place, the president, was a philosopher king. He was the most just and moral person. He understood how to walk in anyone's shoes, and he made a system where there was oversight of everybody, including himself. And when a decision had to be made, it went by majority. And it, because like the first thing I would lean to right now with this government is they don't have a book that translates what they do. So when they say we're going to do this, there's 100 other things they're trying to do also, but they're on page 100 and we're looking at page 1 through 99. And so like that's a real thing too. And I learned about that like with high capacity magazines back when I had them. I had a bunch, like a bunch, and then people started using high capacity magazines to kill people, and whatever that one with the big hotel was, Vegas or Florida, I don't know, I can't keep fucking track, but after
Vegas.
after that, no high capacity magazines. Well, it wasn't the high capacity magazine that caused him to be able to kill that many people, or the slide fire stock. He could, like it was the fact that he wanted to do it, and the fact that whether he had to reload or pull the trigger instead of holding the trigger was not the point. Like this man was going to do this. It's a tragedy, but like he. So I don't know. It's really weird. Everyone I know and myself, I'm mad about like the high capacity magazine ban. But when you break it down to a, a logical thing, it's like, well, if lots of people dying by them, yes. So okay, so I'm gonna inhibit my freedom to earn the benefit of safety as a community. But now let's ask the question: on the sale and ban, or sale and then the ban of high capacity magazines, did gun crimes go down? No, not at all. 100%
Yeah.
not. People who had high capacity mags bought them as an addition to their arsenal. The high capacity mag is not the mag that comes on most standard weapons. Therefore, it's like saying that a car comes with an aftermarket exhaust. Like that just, if you have one, you have the means to get another, or just use the one that it came with. And it's just really really fucked up. So I think in that really convoluted way of saying what they say they're going to do is not what they're going to do, and so that's a problem. But sometimes you can lead a horse to water and can't make him drink. Like there's a lot of times I try to teach someone something, but there's just there's rose colored glasses. I'm looking red, he's looking blue, and our outcome of a conversation is green, and he's not understanding the green. I'm explaining blue and he's yellow, and so it's a bit of perception difference. Just because I think I know it's right, if that's not right for you, are you now going to be inhibited by my want, and your freedom's going to lessen? And what if we reverse that 100%? What if your freedom is 100%? Hate speech isn't a thing. Being politically correct isn't a thing. Racism, sexism, being a misogynist or being anti-Semitic, none of those things now exist because your freedom is 100%. So anything you think
Wow.
is true. Well, no, I'm just
Yeah.
not well. I'm saying in this paradigm, that's how it works. You either have full freedom or full communal societal awareness, and the line in between is forever being pushed. It's like
Yeah.
today you can't say this, or you get in trouble for saying this. Tomorrow it may change, tomorrow it may lessen, it may worsen, but the line is not at 100% freedom, and it is not at 100% restriction. So the fact that any one person could be like, how dare someone do this, how dare someone think this way, it's like, think of the lines: 100%, 0%. We're somewhere in here. And in society, we don't teach people. So you're going to grow up at 47% moral understanding between freedom and restriction. And that's your spot. So just stay there, and then you'll live a docile life. They don't tell us that. We don't have stats for that. That's not even a Spokon thing. So, you know,
Well,
I,
would you want more input on where that line is? Right now, that line is set by people that you have no control over, and they're the ones that dictate to you where that line is. And don't you think you should have some input into where that line is besides just electing a leader?
I'll let Dante go here, but in 10 seconds or less, I think there's a heavy responsibility to pay when you give everyone freedom and everyone's not aware. Like we're all surrounded and protected by. It's gonna take me 20 seconds. We're all surrounded and protected by military and all this beautiful, beautiful ignorance. I can have a podcast, a hairless cat in my lap, go to work every day, and never care about an election or government or politics. And besides the taxes, I'm pretty comfortable. If I lived in Syria, I'm not comfortable. So
Yeah.
we're doing
Yes.
we're doing pretty good. So I'm not gonna bitch, but I think most people would always express that they want more choice and more freedom. But there's a responsibility that comes with that. I'm very grateful of what I have, but I'm even aware that I can't be too outgoing with what I have because then someone's going to want to take it. Like that's the paradigm that's created. If I'm great, people will hate me, and the people who hate me will want to not, allow me to continue being great. Like that's how we all feel with people we hate. That's how hate works. And hate always opposes what you like, and everyone likes and hates different things. It's a big rabbit hole, but you give a swing, Dante.
But we as a society,
So
we're all trying to find that middle ground. Go ahead, Dante.
I this is such a crazy question to answer. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Um, First of all, I don't feel like we don't say where the line is. I don't feel that way at all. I feel like when we're talking about what we can and can't say, for example, like what Ricky was saying, that's that's us. That's all of us as a society coming together and saying, okay, this is harmful, this is not harmful. Um, Somebody like Donald Trump has influence on some people and what some people think is okay to say and what's not okay to say. Um, but I feel like people have their voice if they want it. We have our voice, right?
Well, the
And
internet's helping. Yeah.
we have the ability right now to speak our minds, right? Like I could tell you what I think's right. I could tell you what I think we should do. I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. All right, I'm 24 years old. I think even when I'm 80 years old, I probably wouldn't know. I probably wouldn't even begin to have a clue what the first step is to giving people more power if I even thought that that was a good idea. And I personally don't think that it's a good idea. Um, and I'm basing that on the fact that while I care about politics and I care about this country and I care about the world and I care about people, I also know that um, I know nothing of the world and I know nothing about people. So I have no ability to sit here and even try to come up um, with a preference on how I would want things to be run. I think that the prospect of people having more power um, is scary. I think it comes down to a lot of what Ricky was saying with people having power and then people wanting to take it. I think that's already where we're at a
Okay.
little bit with the presidency. I think that's exactly what it is. It's people wanting power and people fighting to take it.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that it's us, it's the people that fight to say, okay, this person should take it or this person should take it. I think that it's not a perfect system, but is it better than complete anarchy where we all start fighting each other? Yeah, I think it's a little bit better.
It's like the
Okay.
devil you
So
know.
yeah. Well, you guys are in the norm. Absolutely. I have to have an extremely hard time finding anybody that, especially even after giving it a lot of thought, come to the conclusion that it's a good idea to give everybody this kind of power. Almost nobody thinks that. So I just want to finish that thought with telling you that I believe it's totally possible that we could give everybody this kind of power, but the problem is nobody wants to have it. You guys don't think the people should have this kind of power. The people that are in power don't think the people should have this kind of power. Everybody pretty much feels the same way. Now, I'd like to point out, though, that before democracy started, even the concept of democracy, the way we have it, representative democracy, the way it is in the States right now, and it's pretty similar here, when they came up with that whole concept, they didn't even think people could handle that much power, the amount of power you have now. So they thought that, you know, you had to have a king or a czar or a leader, and that people couldn't even choose who that should be. That would be a bad choice. It should be just the most powerful man that happens to naturally get to that point. And it's right that they lead. And therefore, you know, that's why rulers at the time used to say that I have a mandate from God. God has chosen me because I'm the toughest guy and I was able to beat my way to the top. And therefore, he has chosen me as your leader. And therefore, you should all listen to me. So when societies like America tried to move away from that, it was a really big iffy thing. Like, you know, can we give people the power to choose their own leader? Well, they didn't think they could. So they had the Electoral College. So my point is that I think democracy is better than having a king or a czar. That was a hard choice that people made, and they had to allow the citizens to have a little bit of power in order to let that happen. There was no two ways about it. You had to do that. You had to give the people some power in order to have anything that would resemble a democracy. So it was very hesitantly done, but they didn't want a king, so it's the only other option. So anyway, it's as if they did it begrudgingly. Democracy was created begrudgingly. They didn't do it like, we know this is going to be the greatest thing in the world, we got to do this. No, it was, we know a king is bad and we can't do that. That was the only reason we got a democracy. It wasn't because they thought democracy was going to be this great savior thing that was going to be the best way to run the world. They just knew it had to be better than a king. So it's trying to pick the best of all the bad situations, and they considered democracy to be bad. They didn't know it would be worse than having a king. Now, I think it turned out pretty good. I think it turned out better than having a king. I'm a big believer in democracy. I would hope that you guys have come to the conclusion that democracy is better than being ruled.
FYI, real quick, in your new position, your microphone is sitting on top of your zipper.
Okay, so it's making noise.
Click,
it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah,
I was gonna say something. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to spend like 20 minutes fixing this.
Oh, you're
okay.
good.
Sorry,
but I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you're all
no,
good.
That's fine. And let me know, if there are recording problems. So it's probably still happening here.
Yeah, it's just the color of your jacket.
Yeah. So getting, as I'm saying here, the point is that nobody thought democracy was a good idea, but I think it did turn out to be a pretty good idea. It's far from perfect, but it's better than having a king. Would you guys agree it's better than having a king where you have no control at all?
Are we? I mean, are we comparing it to?
Yeah, comparing democracy to any other form of government.
I don't know enough about every other form of government.
I mean,
well, it's every other form.
So I won't speak on it.
Every other form is a form of dictatorship to some degree. I mean, if you're not getting a choice in who your ruler is, then you're being dictated to. And so all other forms, I mean, before they had democracy, they had czars, they had kings, they had, it was, what do they call it? They have landowners and what have you. There's a name for that system.
Okay, but like
But
for
it's all,
example,
they
I can't speak on it because like I don't understand anything about how, for example, Parliament works.
yeah.
So I
But
have
it, but
nothing to
but
say on
it
this
doesn't.
subject.
But that doesn't matter. Can't you look at the? You have a little bit of history, I'm sure. That they had kings in the past, and they had monarchs of different types, and or
I
a
mean,
czar, or
without knowing all the types, I think it's easy enough to be said that a system that's standing can be criticized.
yes,
Like Rome was great. You know what I mean? Rome was awesome. Uh, and all the conquerors amazingness they did.
That'd be a great
Shaped what.
T-shirt. Rome was awesome.
Well,
I
it
would
did.
love to wear that.
The a lot of people died to make what is that part of the world now, and believing all the mythology and hearing the stories and just all the Greek connections. I recently learned that in Sicily. I'm Italian and I'm specifically Sicilian. People will argue that's different. I retarded. Um, so Greeks lived in that part of Italy where Sicilians come from before Sicilians did, like on the timeline. And so I was listening. I was like, motherfucker, I got to do 23andMe. I could be Greek. Like, I don't care if it's like a tenth of a percent. I'm gonna flex it. But no, it's I don't know. USA standing. Um, More than standing. Like in a cocky sense, we're like the biggest superpower. If you want to get iffy, we're one of two, and it's really more like we're one of one. I think everyone understands that it's mutually assured destruction if we start shooting nukes at each other. Like there'll be a guy someday who has the mentality that if he can't have the world, no one can, and he'll do it. But the rest of the world is gonna join up and kill that motherfucker because the rest of us are gonna realize like things are kind of all right. Like we all kind of hate each other. Most of the borders are open. Prior to COVID, like this was the most open the world ever was. Like you can live in the most far places and go travel almost anywhere. And I mean, obviously, financial restrictions a thing, and dictators. Like that's the thing. Like in China, the dictator, you don't get a choice in anything. So when you're like, well, do you think Americans should get a choice? And we do get a choice. It, the question is not do we get a choice. The question is our vote heard, and
yeah,
is our vote counted? And I believe they're tallied, but do they count towards the cause? And I have to believe so. Like for them to get their agenda, them being our government, they have to give like you get further. What's that saying? You get further with honey rather than sugar, or sugar, whatever. Like
vinegar and honey, or vinegar
yeah,
and sugar.
yeah.
Yeah,
My grandmother used to say it all the time, but in a different way. Choosing the path of least resistance when you're trying to talk to someone else is sometimes a massive benefit. If you're aiming to get them to work with you, brown nosing them is a positive. I'm a brown nose at work to everyone because there's no situation in which why I would want to have a contentious relationship with a coworker. I want to work, I want to get paid, and I want to leave. And I used to go to work, be upset, be angry, and hate my life like everyone else, and then leave. But it's the same three steps, just I get to choose to be happy in between, and that's my choice. So,
yeah, yes.
but no,
Uh,
it's insane. I think our the things we want, we get them with a grain of salt. We get what we want, but we get what we want in a 50-second of our freedom being taken away on one subject. You know,
yeah,
um, and going to what Dante said earlier, real quick, in that same sense, like you're asking us what is best. I don't think any is best. I think they're all different in their own way, respectively. I don't think you could take our system and put it in Europe and it would work because everyone is not used to it.
But most of Europe does have a form of democracy.
But a form of is not. I mean, our exact system. Like if you took
Yeah.
our
What
people and put them
I,
there,
I
and you put their
I'm
people and
just
put them here.
I'm just comparing in general democracy against any other system. So democracy, I would hope that everybody, that you guys would agree that democracy is better than any kind of dictatorship.
How good's the dictator? Like, I don't have a dictator.
That's a good question. Now,
Everything's subjective. Like even in our
yeah, well,
democracy, it's all you know.
This gets to another point of mine, and that is that I believe that almost everybody is a little bit fascist. If you could find the perfect dictator, you wouldn't want democracy at all. If you had a dictator that did exactly what you wanted and ran the world in the way that you thought was right, then you'd be happy with that and you wouldn't want democracy at all, wouldn't you?
Well, that's the point of the philosopher king thing. It's the same exact thing as that. Whether you call him a
Yeah,
dictator or I
yeah,
call him a
yeah,
philosopher king, if the
yeah,
one
yeah,
guy fits my, I don't think that dictator is a
exactly.
word that's nice. Like, I can't call someone a dictator and then be like, thank you. What a
Okay, well,
compliment.
use whatever term you want, but the fact of the matter is, you're the person that you think is running the world perfectly. Obviously, he's not. Other people are not going to be happy with him. You're never going to please everybody. So you're going to be happy with the dictator you have, but everybody else in your community may not, and likely not. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make though is everybody would like to have a dictator over democracy if their dictator was doing exactly what they wanted. It's unrealistic because obviously you're not going to get a dictator that's going to make everybody happy. So that's why democracy is the better choice. And there's two parts to that. The second one is you give anybody that kind of power, and you may think they're going to do what you want them to do, but the chances are they're not. They're going to go off in their own direction, and pretty soon the dictator is not that ideal person that you thought they would be. So, there's picking the dictator that is perfect for you, but that's totally different than a dictator that actually turns out to be perfect for you. It's because everybody changes. You have that the problem of all what is it? 100% the control, or what is it? What is it? Where power corrupts. Basically, power corrupts. So you give anybody that kind of power, and they become corrupted, and pretty soon they're not that ideal dictator. Even if they went into the job with full intention of being that ideal dictator, the power corrupts humans, and they go awry, and they start getting their own personal agendas. And there's a million examples from history of dictators that they thought would be the perfect dictator, but then they have their own agenda, it turns out, right? So
I really just think a lot of that has to come down to, like, do you know how to run a military, or make sure everyone in the country has food? Do you know how to make sure that when COVID hits, that every doctor has a mask? And like, there's problems that I've personally realized, at least in 2020, that are a thing. Like, there's a lot of infrastructure in place, and saying infrastructure is bad might be a point of criticism, but from where I'm standing, like, if you're talking about something that's bad in America, it can be fixed. Like, even if it's not the dude who runs it now, it can be sold, bought again, and fixed by someone else later. So, like, as a community, we're all just, like, pancaking on top of one another. I think the government's fucked, but I think enough people are aware of that now, that in 10 or 20 years, we're either going to be gone or way better. I think that's a fact. Like, I don't know that there's much of an in between. I think it's either going to be great, or we're going to be in. I think we got a good 10 years of bullshit coming. Like, literally, we got riots and killings and infrastructure change, and we're gonna fix the cop system. I think we're gonna at least quarter or eighth um the amount of you know, neglectful killings. But it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job.
So if you're not involved, then you're just hoping that you get the right people in the right positions to make this all smooth out.
That's the thing though, like in a democracy we're all involved. Every single citizen pays taxes. Like no one can do anything. Like whether or not we get to choose, we're paying. So like that's why they consider cops public servants, because like
you're involved, all
we're
right, but
paying.
Yes, you're paying, but are you getting what you think is proper value for what you're paying? So you know, everybody has problems with different parts of society, and let me touch on that for a minute. You know, you guys were talking about, well, I don't know. There's some things you would have you feel like you could have some input on, and then there's some things that you feel you don't know enough about. So this gets to the experts portion of this whole scenario. So right now, our governments, they don't use experts the way they should. And who you consider to be an expert is a really big deal. Not everybody that claims to be an expert really is, or they may be an expert in their field, but that actually doesn't mean that they make good decisions. And so who we think are experts. So are you guys familiar with technocracies? People, the idea of a technocracy is supposed to be a merit-based system. Our system now is supposed to be a merit-based system. So in a merit-based system, you have to, you want to judge the people that are in different positions, and they're judged by their merit. So we judge them, and then we try to put these people into the best educated people into the higher positions that control things. The problem with merit-based systems, though, is what I consider an expert to be, or the smartest guy in a certain field, may not be the same person you think is the smartest guy in this specific field. So when I started looking into how we could change the way the world is governed, the way democracies work, and give people more power, I got in contact with a lot of other real tech savvy type of people. Most of them are programmers that also had ideas on how to fix the world. And most of them, they base their ideas on merit and measuring merit. And so, for example, a lot of people think that they can come up with a type of artificial intelligence, or some people work in the blockchain area, and they think using these technologies, they can find ways to measure people's merit in a fair way. And I always get into fights with these people because every method that they use to measure people's merit is flawed. And it's always flawed because it's their idea of the best way to measure merit. But if you were to ask somebody else, they would have a totally different idea on how to measure merit. And so that once again, you run into the same cycle of how do you decide who the smart people are? And so anyway, that to me, that's a big problem with any kind of merit-based system. So what I've come up with, and I to just make this try to get to the end point here. The internet has made it possible for us to actually vote on every individual issue. It is feasible that we can do this. It's feasible, but I've come to the conclusion it's absolutely possible. Now, whether or not we want to do it becomes the bigger question. And as you guys have pointed out, you're not in favor of it. And it's understandable that people would think this way. So I'm not going to get into the ins and outs exactly about what my plan is. Well, I'll quickly run over it in the sense that my plan is simply to create a better Google. To me, the search engine is the ultimate tool for democracy. and we're not using it that way now. And
What would a better Google be?
better Google
Can
would
you?
be a mix. Are you familiar with Yelp? You're familiar with Yelp, I would
Yeah,
assume.
yeah.
A better Google would be a Google that's combined with Yelp. So everything that
Who would
you
own the? Who would own the
well,
company that runs the search engine?
that's the big question. To me, it has to be owned by the people. So it has to become
So
a publicly.
blockchain.
It has to be a publicly owned institution, and I want to do it so it's a publicly owned worldwide institution. In fact, the first worldwide public institution owned and operated by the people. So if we had a Google that was a public institution, then, and not just like an American public institution, but a worldwide public institution, then we would feel more comfortable with them carrying all of our data, hopefully, because then you get to own your data in the sense that you own this institution, and this institution now has control over all the data. So ownership of data is becoming a very big issue. And well, like I said, this would be a publicly owned institution. And I get into it later, but this data has value. This data can create income. It can create income for everybody that's on the system. So it could become a system that actually could not only pay for itself, but provide income for all of its users, which is everybody. So I'm sure you've heard the term basic income. This could become a source for basic income for everybody around the world, because data has value, as we know. So it's the corporate world will be using the data that is collected in our publicly owned search engine, and they'll be using this for marketing and other things, and we can charge them for that, and then they have to pay us for the data that they're using that we own. Because now, instead of big corporations like Google owning this data, we own it. So let me get back to
but isn't that the same exact
Yeah,
thing?
there are a lot of problems with that. I mean, we could go on for hours with that. First of all,
let's not dwell on it too much. But go ahead, hit me with a couple of questions.
Well, I mean, if that isn't that was that not the end point you were trying to get to? Is like, I mean, if it's not, then I'm happy to let you continue and get there.
My real point is not that it can't be built, or my real point is that I believe it can be built. The problem is nobody wants it. I mean, what difference does it make if I can build this thing and it could be the best governing system in the fucking world, but if you don't want it, and I can't convince anybody in the world that it's a good idea, then it doesn't matter that it's possible to do, does it? So the real question is,
I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment. I think it could probably make a good film. There's a video game coming out called Cyberpunk 2077. I think in November. That's probably a lot like that. But it seems to me very dystopian. It seems really, really. I mean, it seems like. I guess I'm probably going to get too far away from the main topic here, which is it worth? The question is right. Is it worth coming up with these ideas?
yes, that's what
I think the answer is yes. I think it's worth it because I think it's healthy to question your government, and I think it's healthy to question what's good for people. I think it's healthy. I think just thinking in general is healthy. It can also very quickly become unhealthy to ruminate on something, but um, you know, I guess the first point that I would make with this is like I already hate the idea. I hate that idea. I think that sounds absolutely awful. No offense to you, but I mean, just even just those few words of like a search engine run by the people sounds like such a an impossible concept. Um, it's wild, man. And no, not shooting shots at you.
Yeah.
Because hell, I'd probably come up with something way worse. But I think that's kind of the point, right? Is you and I have a different opinion on that. Um, and the guy up in the left on my screen probably has a different opinion on that.
Uh-huh.
You
Yes.
know.
And
Um,
that's kind of my point. We need to listen to all the opinions and then come to consensus. And that's where the problems are in the world right now. We can't come to consensus. We can't even measure public opinion. And so that's the whole point. And so I mentioned the
I mean,
Google,
I think Twitter exists. I think Twitter's a good a good way of
okay.
measuring public opinion, and I
Well,
think
let me tell you why it's not. And it's not because
okay.
you don't get good data to come with that information. So somebody sends you a tweet and then it gets resent or liked to a certain degree, and so it looks like a whole bunch of people are giving you this opinion, but you don't have the actual data to show you. First of all, there's particular kind of people that are on Twitter, so you're not getting the full scope of what the public thinks. You're only getting the voices of the most vocal people, and you don't even know where those voices are coming from. They could be anywhere in the world. You don't even know if they're coming from your community. You don't know what demographics they are. You don't know what age group they're in. You don't know how much of the public they are representing. So this is data with no. This is an opinion with no data. You're getting some data. It's got likes and it's got retweets, but it's not giving you hard data saying, okay, 5,000 people retweeted that, but that's out of 7 billion in the United States, so or 7 billion in the world, and so therefore you're only looking at an extremely small percentage. So what I'm proposing is going to be a lot like Twitter in that people can put out their opinions, but when you take a look at an opinion, you're going to see exactly what that opinion is representing, who is behind that opinion. Maybe not their individual name, although that is possible in my system. I want to be able to put my name to my opinion if I want to. I want to be able to fully dox myself if I want to. In the same way that a person puts a sign out in their front lawn that says, I'm all for this candidate, that person is doxing himself and saying, I am so pro this candidate that I'm willing to put it in my front yard and let everybody know it's me saying this, right?
I think you're
That's
doing that
important.
right now.
All right, people.
I think what you're talking about is called the internet, and I think you're doing it right now.
Well, on Twitter, most people are anonymous. In a lot of websites, people are anonymous, and so it's not like they're putting their name in front of what they're saying. It's not like they're putting their face in.
But you have the option to if you
Oh,
wanted to,
yes.
which is what we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You can, yes, and I put more, and that's another point too. You put more merit, or you believe somebody's opinions, or more strongly believe their opinion, or that they are saying it correctly, if they put their name on it. It makes a difference if somebody is telling you something and they're staying anonymous, or whether or not they're telling you something and telling you this is me and I'm telling you this, right? It makes a difference. So once again, Twitter, you don't know how many people were anonymous that retweeted that opinion. You don't know how many people were put their name on it. All this data matters. You have to have all the data to go with the opinions in order to make them actually to know whether or not you should actually pay any attention to them at all. A lot of tweets, he's probably better off if you never saw them.
Hell, isn't that the truth? Goddamn. I mean,
Yes.
All
holy
right.
shit. But
Well,
I mean,
So
man, I hate that. I hate that. So we're at the end of our hour here, and I feel like
yeah.
we just got started on the interesting
Well,
conversation.
if I could say anything, it's that I want people to start thinking about whether or not people should have the power. And because once again, this kind of caught you guys off guard. You didn't really consider this before at all. You know, should people have more power? You just assume that there's a government out there and
Well,
that's the way it runs.
I
I
real
want,
quickly, I want to interject that's not true in my case, and I think it's just a wild assumption to think that I haven't thought about it.
okay.
Um, just because I mean you don't know me, you don't know Ricky, and we don't know the masses, and we don't know what the masses are thinking. Um, but I have thought about it. But at the same time, you did catch me off guard with some of your questions and some of your ideas, and I'm grateful for that. I think it's been cool having you as a guest because that's kind of what we're looking for. Is I find your thoughts and what you find interesting. I find it interesting how passionate you are about it, how passionate you
Mhm.
seem about it, I suppose. And you seem like a genuine guy, so I'll go ahead and just say that um, I'm interested in what you have to say. Um,
Well, I'm really happy to hear that.
yeah, just on a general level because we have to wrap up.
yeah,
If
no,
I could,
that
can
was
I just,
yeah. Go
sorry,
ahead. Final notes. What's up?
I just want to touch on one other aspect of this whole thing. When I delve into this and I talk to people about this, and I research what people think in this regard, one of the questions that they often come to is, well, whether or not the people should have the power, but also whether or not, let's see, where was I going with this? Power.
Oh, we could totally touch on this. You can come on again, Brian. We're at some point gonna start having longer episodes, but at least for my current schedule right now, I have to be at work in like 45 minutes, so it's not as much me being like I don't want to be here. I have other
Yeah.
obligations. But no,
Okay.
thank you very much for having you on, and I think Dante just said thank you in a way, and yeah, no, that was really creative and interesting, and yeah, I mean keep up talking to people and getting ideas out there. And if you want to come on again in a while, we're more than happy to have you back on. But
Sure. I would love
Yeah,
another
I think
opportunity. Yes.
I think we just got started on the conversation. So yeah, I think having you back on at some point soon would be great if you're willing.
yeah, and we'll have our other host here, and maybe we could even do a little bit of a longer form segment. Since we know that you're 2 hours behind us, if we were to be up at like 9 or 10, for you that would be a pretty reasonable time. So maybe we
Really,
could.
it doesn't matter to me. I can work with any time. I can get up early. It's not a problem for me at all.
Yeah,
Whatever
it
works for you guys.
Real quick. Goodbye, guys.
all right.